Welcome to ideaXchange, a podcast about sharing ideas between peers. This show exists for mission driven organization executives who are navigating real decisions about strategy, technology, data, and member value. Not hypotheticals, not hype. ideaXchange is sponsored by 108 Ideaspace, where we work with association, nonprofits, and regulatory bodies to modernize how they operate, engage, and grow without losing sight of why they exist, the purpose. Today's guest is a good example of what this podcast is about. I'm joined by Neal Couture, CEO of ASNT, the American Society of Nondestructive Testing. ASNT sits at the intersection of safety, workforce development, standards, certification, and emerging technology, including AI. If something critical fails in the real world, chances are someone trained, certified, or supported by ASNT was supposed to prevent it. Neil isn't an entity practitioner by training. He's an association executive who leads a deeply technical profession. Under his leadership, ASNT has launched a 10-year Vision 2035 strategy, redesigned its membership value model, invested in digital products like an AI assistant and professional workflow tools, and taken a very intentional approach to trust, governance, and modernization. In this episode, we are going to be talking about what actually goes into executing long range strategy, how associations can produce and productize expertise responsibly, and what it takes to modernize member value without breaking trust. Neil, welcome to Idea Exchange.
Thank you, Ashish. It's a pleasure being here.
Amazing. As I just mentioned, we understand you're not an entity practitioner by training. Let's start with how you ended up leading a technical profession without being a technical practitioner.
Well, like a lot of my peers, I ended up in association management completely by accident. I was in the aerospace and defense industry. I was on my board of directors of that professional society when an opportunity arose to join the staff and cross the lines from volunteer to staff. So my first 20 years of my career were in that aerospace sector, and so introduced into the association world in 1999. I took a little side detour into the academic world for a little while, but I came back because associations are my home. The fact that I'm not a technical type, that's okay. I don't do NDT for a living. I do association management for a living, so that doesn't pose a problem at all. And again, my path is not an uncommon one for association professionals.
Mhm. How do you earn the trust and make decisions when your members are these SMEs or subject matter experts in the profession?
Well, it's interesting because my entire career, whether I was in aerospace, association, or higher ed, I've been dealing with technical professionals. So whether it was engineers, I was an Air Force officer. I worked for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I was always working on projects, programs, or business units that had very much a technical aspect. So from my earliest days, I was brought up, working with and in a technical environment. So this is nothing new to me. Just like any other field, though, the key to associations is listening to the members and understanding what their challenges are. Now, sometimes I have to have some interpretation, and I have to have some guidance along the way, but I've got an excellent board. I've got a lot of volunteers who help me understand the nuances of the industry, the technology. So when I can, for example, go on Capitol Hill and speak to congressional staffs or whatever, I can explain to them the challenges and the issues that this field faces without necessarily having a technical background. It's actually quite natural. It's all very much a business as well. It's all
Mhm.
about products, services, markets, all of that, which is essentially what my background is.
Sure. Um, yeah, and I think, as you said, a lot of association executives have a similar kind of journey where they may not be in the same profession, but leading that profession. Now, while I was doing some research for this podcast, I came across, some of your statements. One where you called the NDT professionals as the unsung heroes. And my question is, what do you wish the public and policymakers understood about the work before something fails and show up in the news?
Yeah. So the NDT, and there's a lot of fields like that where they're out there, you don't know them, you didn't hear about it in school, you may not even have ever met anyone, but they're essential to either the business world or the technical world. NDT is like that. So non-destructive testing essentially are people who make the world a safer place. They do that through use of various different types of technology to inspect things, whatever they are, non-destructively. So the idea is that they can inspect it and then put it back in service without destroying it. So it's all about safety and quality. So what I would want people to know is that non-destructive testing is an essential technical skill. we don't have enough people entering the field. We don't have enough people staying in the field, or the people that are in the field are aging out, like in a lot of career fields. So we have a workforce challenge, and we work hard to try and promote that workforce to trade schools, universities, all the different paths of entry into a career field. We just want people to know that this is an important field. It's a rewarding field. The pay is solid, and the experiences that you get are unique. The ability to work on a space flight program, or work on deep submersible submarines or Air Force jets. The types of work that NDT professionals do is quite varied and quite interesting. So it's a great field to enter.
Sure. And like, why do you think there's a challenge with not many people adopting that as a profession?
So I don't think it's frankly got too much to do with NDT. I think just like a lot of fields, we could certainly do with more publicity. But I think it really has to do, it's a deeper issue. Certainly in the United States, we've done some research with McKinsey, the consulting firm, who's really done a good job of studying demographics, birth rates, population challenges, and how that impacts business, gross domestic product, productivity in industries. And what we have found, and what they found, was basically there just aren't enough people. There just aren't enough people either being born or coming into the workplace in the United States, certainly, but this impacts a lot of countries, not just the United States. Essentially, the supply of human resources is slowed because of a variety of factors. So what that means is we have to get the work done and continue to have inspections, quality, safety, and all of that, using the workers that we have. There's not a giant pool of talent waiting over the hill to come and rescue us. My colleagues in welding, my colleagues in corrosion prevention, we're all facing the same issues. And frankly, we're all arm wrestling over the same talent coming out of high school or college. The reality is we don't have enough. So we're going to have to meet that need through productivity. AI is always a subject of discussion, but other forms of technology, work process, manufacturing techniques, which can improve reliability and quality, lots of different areas to improve productivity to get us where we need to be rather than just manpower.
Sure. And what kind of skills are needed to become an NDT? Like, is it a program that you go through?
Yeah. So NDT workers are actually in a couple of different levels. So we have technicians, which are typically the people who are in the field conducting tests or inspections. They probably came out of a community college or a trade school program. It's very much a skilled trade. They have to have good skills in physics, engineering, mathematics. So you say, well, that doesn't sound like a high school or a trade school. It really is to do the technician level of the work. We also have engineers, so people that either design processes, design equipment, or are responsible for the quality and inspection function. Engineers, of course, typically bachelor's degree or master's degree in one of the engineering disciplines, usually mechanical engineering, material sciences, etc. We have a third level, which is the researchers. So a group of people that essentially are researching material science. How does this material react? How can it be inspected in the field once it's in operation? How can we examine the materials to make sure that when we manufacture them, we consider the life cycle of the material and design in resilience, etc. So 3 levels of education. For the researchers, of course, their PhD, material science, or sometimes we have chemical engineers, those kinds of folks. But we have a very diverse group of members as a result of ranging from high school education all the way up to PhDs.
And the challenge of the supply of resources, is that common to all 3 levels, or?
Yep. I think we see shortages in fielding new engineers into non-destructive testing. Mechanical engineering was once a very popular destination for college graduates. Over the years, IT, electrical engineering, other forms of engineering have drawn interest. So we always struggle with having enough not only technicians, but engineers and also researchers because, again, there's no advertisement for research into NDT. Most people end up in it by accident. They've gotten into college and they're researching something and one of their professors has an NDT class. And so they get intrigued and they'll head down that path. But so it's always a workforce issue at all levels.
Well, I think problem equals opportunity. So I'm sure like your association is working hard to bridge that gap as well.
We are. We do a ton of advocacy. So we're working with industry. We're working with academia. We're working with trade schools. We have a public relations campaign. We're on Capitol Hill. We submit grant proposals for workforce development. So we've got a full array of advocacy activities to try and buttress the workforce challenge.
Mhm.
Again, but I think it's in many regards it's bigger than ASNT or bigger than any one organization to solve.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's zoom out a little bit. So you have put a 10-year stake in the ground. The Vision 2035, it's a 10-year bet.
Yeah,
What changed in the world that made this the right horizon? And what are the keystone priorities that makes the rest possible?
right. So I mean, we know that a 10-year view of the world is not in vogue right now. Most of the reading that you do about strategic planning and strategy in general says, oh, you've got to be nimble. Strategic planning is actually obsolete. We view it a little differently. We see it as our responsibility to try and look into that future to understand what will be the challenges of our members, what will be the challenges of our association. So even though our view and the plan is referred to as Vision 2035, it doesn't mean that we are set in our strategies on day one and that's it for 10 years. It just means that's what we're looking out to because we know that technology changes, the workforce problem changes. I don't expect our challenges, those main priority, the pillars, the objectives, whatever we call them, those aren't going to change in the next 10 years, frankly, because they haven't changed in the last 10 years. They're
Mhm.
enduring societal fundamental problems. The only thing that changes is how we approach them, how we invest our resources to solve those problems, and the like. Shall I review the four pillars for you in our
Sure.
plan? Sure. Okay, so the first one is workforce, and that's the challenge that we've had, which is to expand and strengthen the global NDT workforce by providing some innovative processes for entry, development, education, training, certification, the entire life cycle. So we don't view it as our job is to get you in here. Our job is to find you, introduce you, get you in, keep you, and then when it's time for you to move on, to shake your hand as you leave the door. So it's a full life cycle
Mhm.
view of the workforce development challenge. Our second pillar is essentially to promote and accelerate the the adoption of advanced technologies, so next generation NDT technologies, whether that's in the area of data sciences. So a lot of work is being done with AI, obviously, big data, fast data, all the way down to the fundamental mechanical processes of non-destructive testing, radiographic techniques, essentially taking x-rays of structures. How do you
Mhm.
interpret that film? How do you interpret the digital image? Lots of different methods within NDT, all are technology dependent. And so we look at it as part of our responsibilities to get these technologies, first of all, find funding for the research if the industry isn't doing it themselves, um, get that technology transferred from government and research institutes into industry quicker. There's always a problem there. And then making sure that the people that are out there know about the technologies, know how to use the technologies, are comfortable, qualified, etc. Our
Mhm.
third pillar is essentially to create a coordinated, unified, activated global NDT community. So as you can imagine, NDT is not just about the United States. We're the largest of the societies in the world. We weren't the first; we were the third behind the Germans and another group all the way back in the late 30s. But we are the largest now, and so
Mhm.
we believe we have a global responsibility to work with our peer associations to make sure that we are all heading in the same direction. Because if a person is doing NDT in the United States, chances are they're doing it the same way or similarly in Germany, Japan, wherever. So we have a very central role in the international community. We take that seriously. And then our fourth pillar, of course, is to build a high performance organization that has financial sustainability long term, which is probably a main objective of any professional association today. So those are our four pillars.
Amazing. And what are the two or three metrics that you actually are measuring to say that the strategy you have laid out
Yeah,
is working? And
yeah.
uh,
Well, it's interesting because how do you measure progress on such a macro scale? For example, how can you tell when the workforce problem is getting better? So there's some things you can count. There's like people entering the field, people leaving the field, net sum gains. But we actually believe one of the most important metrics in workforce is what the industry thinks. So if the industry keeps telling us that we have a workforce problem, then we need to keep working at it. If the industry believes that the workforce problem has been solved, despite all the numbers, then we need to listen to that as well. So it really is almost like an opinion feedback that we're developing right now, which is to say, how do you feel about it? Almost like an index, like the purchasing managers index that they publish every year gives a sense on the confidence of pricing. Well, we're in that same boat. I want to know what industry feels about the net impact of our work. Is it helping, or are we not helping at all? So that's one important metric. It's same in the area of adoption of technology, which is, does the industry feel like they have access and understand how to use, etc., the new technology that's available? So it's really, what do our members think? What do our customers think? What do our stakeholders think? Is probably the most important metric. And then, of course, for a high-performing organization, it's standard traditional financial measures to make sure that your resources are being appropriately utilized for the mission that we have. But we are also looking at things like engagement. What is engagement? In association, engagement's a big discussion. What is engagement? Is it counting up heads? How many people came to my conference? How many people I certified? How many members do I have? The most typical and traditional measures that we have. Are those really measuring what we think they are? Are they telling us that there's quality, or is there growth? So you can do some of those tracks, of course, which we do, but we feel like some of those other metrics about what the customer feels are the more important ones.
Absolutely. And how are you like measuring those? Like, is it about asking the members directly and surveying?
Yeah, it really is an opinion survey where you ask the same question over time and track how their perception is shifting. And hopefully their perceptions are impacted by the world around them, how things are going. Is it easier or harder to hire? Those kinds of questions. So those are really, it's about their perception at different points in time to see if we're moving the needle at all.
And what have you heard from your members? Like, do they do they see that? Of course, like these are, if I think about the pillars, these are important for the industry, important for the profession. What have you heard from your members about, how they feel about the role of ASNT?
Yeah. So we just did, as part of the strategic planning process, we did a very deep dive into stakeholder analysis and understanding what different stakeholder sets were interested in, concerned about, and in that process, of course, we get a ton of feedback. In general, what we're finding is that for most of our members, they're very happy with what we are doing. They're satisfied with the range of products that are available to them. They're satisfied that we understand their concerns, and they're satisfied that they have options when they come to us. We did find one gap, though, and that gap really is at what we call the executive level. So the people that are vice president, C-suite type of people in mid-sized and large organizations, they're not necessarily NDT professionals themselves, but they're a key stakeholder for us because they employ all of the NDT professionals, or they hire NDT services. So we need to have them in this conversation. We need them in the community right along with us. And that one's a gap for us. So we've been focusing on what is our value proposition for that group of people. We just, for example, ran our first Thought Leaders Conference, which was a by invitation only, small group dynamic, C-suite level people. And we basically brought them in a room. We brought in McKinsey. We brought in an economist in from Boston College. We brought in a technologist, an AI expert, and we talked about three areas: AI, human workforce development issues, and economic forecast. And it was just one day condensed. They loved it. They thought it was the best thing they've heard in a long time. And we did it for them for free because we just feel it's an important stakeholder set we've got to reach. So that was step one. So that's other than that, we get a fairly good sense of satisfaction across our members.
That's amazing. I see this as such a big opportunity you've identified,
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you will see the folks who are directly impacted by your services, by the profession, and this is almost like trying to go one step beyond and say, what factors are impacting our stakeholders, and going and what's your value proposition to them, which is interesting.
Exactly. When we look at our mission, our mission is to advance the field of non-destructive testing. It's a little different. Our mission isn't to serve the NDT professional, which is kind of counterintuitive in a membership society. So we view ourselves much more like, frankly, a hybrid trade group and individual membership society, but we're responsible for the whole field, so that includes individuals as well as organizations.
Yeah. And I also learned like you have recently made some changes in the membership tiers, and you kind of redesigned. What problem were you actually solving when you did that, and
Yeah.
what did you stop doing to make a new model work?
Yeah. So, like a lot of associations, our membership was stagnant in terms of membership headcount. We looked back and it was starting a slow decline about 7, 8 years ago. And we did all kinds of different things. We measured member satisfaction, net promoter score. We got all the metrics, all the data, and we're getting highly satisfied members. So the people that were coming to our conferences, the people that were getting certified, the people everyone using our services, were quite happy with it. So it wasn't a quality issue. And as a matter of fact, attendance, engagement, all of the metrics we had showed we were increasing. But that one product line known as membership was not increasing. Why? So we did some more research, and we found out that there was almost like maybe it's a generational issue. It's a mental model that says, I don't want to have to pay to play. I don't want to pay $100 or $150 just so you can try and market to me. I want you to be, if you have something of relevance and I'm aware of it, I'll come and buy it, which they do. But they're increasingly not interested in just joining or being what I would call a mailbox member, which is the old terms we used to use. So what we said is we have to break down and eliminate the barrier to entry. Our membership dues was essentially a barrier to entry. So we also viewed membership differently. We didn't view membership like a capital M. You're a member. That gave you rights, that you could vote, you could get involved. We viewed member with a lowercase m, which is you're a member of the community. Whether you've ever heard of ASNT or not, if you're in the NDT community, you're in the community. So our goal was to try and reach more of them by eliminating the barriers to entry. So we created a new membership category called Associate Member. This is not new. It's been done before. It's a free membership category, and a member can join using the Associate Member category and see what we have, look at the products, get access to some amount of our content, some amount of our engagement. They don't get the full suite of products. It's almost like a Netflix model. You get to see some of the movies.
Right.
And then if you're a regular member, you pay the regular dues, you get to see more of the content. And if you're the high end, we've now have 3 categories. The high end, which is, I forget the terminology, I don't even know what we call it anymore, where you can pay the highest rate and you get access to everything plus. And so what we found was selling value was more important than selling, quote, traditional membership. And it's worked like gangfire, so we're quite happy with it so far.
That's pretty cool. And what did you stop? Like, I think it's this mindset shift as well, right? When you are making that sort of a change, and like working with so many associations who consider something like this, it's not, you just flip a button and it's done. It's, convincing the board, making sure it's not going to backfire. There's a lot of prep that goes into it.
Yeah.
What did that look like for ASNT?
Well, I mean, it really starts with making sure that you have a board that is forward thinking. One of the first things we did when I got here 6 years ago is we looked at how leadership selection happened or didn't happen. A lot of associations have that call for applications, and if you're a member, you're qualified. You throw your name in the hat, you get on a ballot, and then it's a competition or a beauty contest. That's a non-strategic way of selecting a board. So we were disciplines of a lot of the good governance that's out there. And I've been doing this for a few years. So one of the things that we realized is we really had to have a competence-based board, meaning they had to be selected for a very specific reason. What did they know? What did they have as experience? And what can they add to the discussion that we're missing? Not just, I can't just have a room full of technicians when I also have to worry about a research committee, for example. So we really went away from the old models of leadership selection, which were quite literally broken. We have, let's say, 5 board openings a year. And if only 4 candidates were nominated, what do? Well, you're going to have a missing, we had a write-in process. So we actually had an experience where one member became a board member because he had 10 of his friends write him in on a ballot, which is not ideal, right? So we re-examined our leadership selection process. It started there. Once we got the right people in the room, and not that the people that were there weren't the right ones, but now we knew they were the right ones, intentionally so, they were able to look forward and say, this is where we need to be. Understood how to examine data, understood how to take risk, and made sure that when we took risks, even though they were well documented and justified and rationalized, you keep an eye on it. What's happening? What's working? What's not working? Do we need to shift gears? So it's a very engaged board, a very informed board, and I think that was the key. And nothing we could do on the operational side would have happened or mattered if we didn't have a very well engaged board at the front end.
Sure. And from a member's perspective, like how did you get them to buy in, or how did you plan, especially for folks who have been with you for a long time?
Yeah. So you have to. It's a lot of communications. It's a lot of messaging. It's a lot of emails, town hall meetings, all of the above. But also, I'm going to share with you, we're seeing some different behavior in our members. So once upon a time, membership associations, everyone wanted a hand in building the machine. Everyone wanted a hand in, whatever it was you were doing. And I'm finding today that they're acting more like customers, many of them. For example, voting rates. Most associations that do elections where they go to members for votes are finding the response rate is decreasing continuously, no matter what they do. We're down to 7%. Only 7% of our members vote in our election. And that's because, and when we go out and we ask members, they basically say, that's not what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about certification. Concerned about getting a promotion. I'm concerned about doing my job better. So you guys do that and I'll stick around. As opposed to, I want to be involved in, picking the color of the napkins at the annual conference, which is, a lot of membership societies struggle with those. So I think there's behavior changing both within the association, but also within our membership in terms of what it is they want out of their society. It's becoming, in many ways, more like a business and less like a club,
Makes sense. Yeah, it's the evolution of associations.
I think that's going to be just going even more in that direction in coming years.
Mhm. And do members look at ASNT as the thought leader as well, or like what kind of image members have about ASNT?
I think they very much do. I mean, ASNT is, and frankly, it's not just the United States, even though we're the American society, we have a huge, huge reach. We were the first ones to come up with certification program in the field. We published the standard for personnel development that the world adopted. Essentially, the ISO standard that now exists was written on our standard, which we developed in 1966. So being the first in a lot of different ways and having the global community want those products means everyone in the world of NDT, no matter where they are, know who we are and have a great perception of our brand and our quality and our relevance. But it's one of those things you can't take for granted. You can never just, oh, we're great, we're fine. You always have to continuously work on your communication, product,
Mhm.
program, services, understanding stakeholder needs, all of that good stuff.
And especially doing it at a global level, what are some challenges do you foresee?
I mean, the biggest challenge is just, do you have the resources to reach where you need to reach? We've got an office now in Chennai, India, because India, after the United States, was our second largest market. We had more members there than we had in any other state in the United States, but we were really doing nothing for them. We had no presence. We had no thought process. So over the last 10 years, we've created a section, started having conferences, opened this office. So now the people that are in India actually see ASNT has a real presence, and I think that's given them some confidence about what we do. We're now in the process of moving into the Middle East, doing the same thing, opening an office in UAE, and just being present. I think that we would love to do more. It's just resource constraints. Do you have enough money to spend to open up a facility, recognizing that you won't see the return on that investment for 5 to 10 to 20 years or whatever?
Yeah.
Do you develop a customized product? Now, AI has been, of course, a great tool. So one of the barriers to entry for international markets has always been language. And even though English is the business language, what we found in practice is if you go into the industries in India, when they come to a training class, they may be willing to speak English, but when they're in the workplace and they're handling equipment, talking to their coworkers, they're speaking a local dialect or Hindi. So how do I get information to those folks rapidly? So with AI tools, we could do rapid development of translations, and in technical fields, that's also challenging because you have to go back and QC it to make sure that the technical term was properly translated. But it accelerated our ability to service more of the market across the world, not just India and the Middle East.
Mhm. And since you brought AI, we know that you have recently launched an AI assistant as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
how did you come up with that idea that
Yeah.
this is what you need for members versus a general purpose AI tool and let them use that?
Yeah. So just like, pretty much everybody else, we're out there looking at the world of AI going, oh my God, it's a
Mhm.
fire hose of information and trying to understand how to make sense of it. And so we kind of look at ourselves as somewhat innovative. So we said, who's out there offering something that's ready to field quickly? How do we get to market quicker than everybody else? We learned of a product called BettyBot, which is in the association space. They're doing an AI program. Others have followed, but they were one of the first. So we were one of the first adopters of Betty. Our bot is called Anita, which is essentially an AI tool for non-destructive testing, Anita. And so we did it just, first of all, the investment was modest, but our goal was just to learn. get my staff familiar with how these things work, understand everything from as basic as the terminology to the technology, and then to see what our members respond to and what they're looking for. So we had focus groups and we had test groups. And then we launched it and gave a demonstration at our annual conference, and it's just took off. People were very impressed because, you know, technical fields, people always have questions about everything from the how-tos to the how do you get certified, what I call traditional customer service questions. So, for example, we've had the opportunity to reduce our number of customer service reps because they're not fielding the same calls all the time. Now people
Yep.
use the AI tool to answer those fundamental questions. But we also made ours available to the person in the field. So if they're out there and they're saying, well, you know, what's the proper technique to inspect a 90-degree elbow joint that is made of stainless steel number 25, whatever.
Mhm.
And so the bot is trained up on all of my technical knowledge, so our training books, our technical manuals, etc. And it's a closed system, so we don't allow our system to learn from anything else except what we train it to do. And
Mhm.
ours is, we believe ours is the best information out there. So there's actual performance assistance tools that we now offer to our members, which I think they find valuable.
That's very cool. And what kind of governance guardrails did you put around that? Because of course AI comes with its own set of risks, and something that you mentioned already. It's referring only your information. That's definitely one. Uh, what about like how do you ensure accuracy?
Yeah.
How do you ensure IP? Some of those guardrails.
Yeah, so yeah, the guardrails are important. From the very start, we were discussing this. One of those is, and certainly for the NDT field, there's always a human in the system. So at no time is there not a human who has touched the process somewhere, so that it's not just machines talking to each other. For an inspector, that's critical because we're not at a point in technology where we're comfortable just taking data, feeding it into a machine, and telling us what the flaw is. It has to be validated by a human being. So in
Yep.
our case, the closed loop system, making sure that the data that's fed in is only our own and
Mhm.
that we don't have external influences that we can't control, uh, perhaps skew the data or something. We have a ton of volunteers who do various forms of checks and QCs. So we'll periodically have a subject matter group review some fundamental questions that we ask it to validate. Yes, when we asked it that question about the 90-degree elbow, we actually got a result from the right textbook that made sense technically. Um, and for the customer service team, same thing. We'll periodically feed it questions, check the response, and say, yep, it's still giving the correct answer, like how to get certified, price, fundamental customer service. So it's a lot of QC back checking, but also just keeping it clean from the start.
Mhm. And for our audience, what were some of the lessons learned when this is definitely pretty new and people are adopting it slowly.
You know, I was just at a conference here recently, SES, which is the STEM Society,
Mhm.
where our peer group is, and that's the hot topic of conversation. What do we tell others? I mean, the first thing is don't be afraid. A lot of us associations are struggling just with the fear factor, which is my board's terrified of it, my staff's terrified of it, everyone's afraid of it. You got to start because guess what? Everybody else has, and so is your competitor. And if you don't learn, develop, try something out quickly, you're going to be left behind. You just got to face the fact that we're in a competitive world. Now, make sure that when you do things like testing it, you have the properly controlled conditions and the things we were just talking about, the guardrails.
Yep.
But my encouragement is jump in with both feet. We took some risks when we started. We said we're going all out. So I've got people learning, Copilot, Chat GPT, use it for everything. Pay attention, look carefully. And some of my staff, especially people like my editors, the people that traditionally develop content in rather disciplined ways, were really fearful of it, thinking, "Oh my gosh, this could take our information and misrepresent it, or whatever." And what we have found out is a lot of those fears were misgrounded, just fear. So again, good process, good oversight, good governance to make sure that you don't go too far, but encouraging your employees just to jump in. We brought
Mhm.
in McKinsey again, had them brief the board of directors 3 times now on the state of AI, so that if the board members aren't themselves working in it, they hear expertise talking about it and what it means in the
Yep.
world that we are dealing with. So a lot of those are the things that we found. Use a vendor. I mean, we use Betty, but there's tons of companies out there
Mhm.
that can help, that have already learned those lessons for you. Engage in your professional societies. Go to these meetings where people like me are talking about what went right, what went wrong. That's
Yeah.
how you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think really important to make sure everybody has a common vocab around these as well. So really interesting input there for the strategy sessions for the board included, and of course your senior management. I think we saw it, saw the same kind of a thing happening maybe a decade ago when it was social media with the world of CRMs and so on. Every time there's a technology shift, it's important that the senior management, the board, is already having that same vocab and talking about the same things.
By the way, I've been around long enough, so I've seen several generations of this technology. So I remember the day when the first PC showed up on my desk in my office, and
Mhm.
everyone looked at each other and said, "I don't want to use that. You use it." And
Mhm.
here we are. Of course, it's ubiquitous.
Yeah.
I remember that with websites. When the first websites came out, everyone was, "Oh, that's just a fad. That's not going to last."
Mhm.
Where are we today? So AI is just the same. The only difference, frankly, between those technologies and this one is the speed. The pace of adoption, the pace of development is just breakneck speed right now. So you really got to pay attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's only going to get faster from here. Any change that comes. Now, one question I had for you was, since you are a standards organization as well, how do you modernize the standards and certifications as well without eroding the trust, especially with so much change happening around you?
I mean, the real answer is very, very carefully, um,
Mhm.
very deliberately. Certification is one of those where change tends to happen slow. Change tends to happen last. So, your publications, your documents, your conferences, a lot of these things are fairly nimble. Certifications tend to grow intentionally so slowly. So, for us, it really was a case of making sure that our certification team was involved in the adoption process and saw it as it happened, was learning right along with us, even though we didn't necessarily plug it in for that. But what they're starting to see is, and of course, one of our certification directors is on the board of directors of ICE, which is the Institute for Credentialing Excellence, I think. So she's a professional certification professional. And
Mhm.
so she has a good idea of what's going on in that world, where there is, a more cautious approach to things. But even there, we're testing it using AI for question writing, rapidly developing expanded question and answer sets that can then be pilot tested with test takers to expand our test pool so we can reach a certain number of questions that we can start automating certain things. So that's, I think, a real great potential, and I think we're within 12 months of that actually happening. Some associations are already doing it. It just means that it's how you use your volunteer subject matter experts is changing. So
Right.
once upon a time, you would use them to write the question, answer sets, have another team review them, and so on. Now what you do is you have your subject matter, your content library. Your AI tool goes in, reads that, develops the question answer set. Now your subject matter expert is acting as a review official as opposed to an author or drafter. And
Right.
that's going to accelerate that process, I think, dramatically and make it so much more, I would say, reliable because people are not the greatest at writing valid question answer sets if they don't have training in that area. So I
Mhm.
think this is a great potential in the area of certification. Similarly, in standards, I mean, standards have historically been on time-based cycles. What I mean by that is they'll issue a new edition in 4 years, every 4 years, no matter nothing changed or everything changed. 4 years, 4 years. Can't do that anymore. The world doesn't work that slow. So I'm seeing standard organizations being challenged to deal with updates to their standards when something of significance happens rather than based on a time-based schedule, which frankly was tied to the old publication schedules. It took you 4 years to essentially get the team together, edit, review, write, publish a significant publication. Well,
Mhm.
all of those are processes I just mentioned that are assisted by AI now. So
Yeah.
you can accelerate your standards process, whether it's developing new standards or updating or modifying existing standards.
Mhm. And it requires, again, different way of thinking. Where do you start your day, for example, is very different from where it used to be. So AI tools are like part of the day-to-day activities. Now, if an association executive wants to modernize member value in the next 12 months, what are the first three moves you would suggest they follow?
Well, I hope you've been thinking about it before now, but
Mhm.
if it's a new association executive or if they've had a changeover and they're just coming in now examining value, first and foremost, do a stakeholder analysis, which is who are the people that I have to deal with? It's not just members. It's a much broader audience. Know who that audience is. Communicate extensively, whether it's surveys, interview methods, whatever the data gathering method is. Get as much information as you can from who your stakeholder sets are so you can get a sense of where you are in your customer community. You can do an internal review and look at your products and your processes all day long, but until you understand what the world out there is needing, thinking about, doing, you're going to be lost. So start with the external. Second is you have to do a quick analysis to understand where do your product sets need to change in order to service those stakeholder needs. So an internal assessment on your product, not only your products, but your processes, your product development cycle. Most associations have very accidental, almost, product development cycles. They're not brought up in typical industries. They don't think about workflow process, those kinds of things. So I think you have to make sure that you understand what the stakeholder wants, make sure you have a machine in place that can build it, and then a good team to sell it. Once upon a time, associations were all about, I'm going to do stuff and I'm going to tell my members and my members will come and buy it. Today, we're very much inundated with competition. I mean, our biggest competitors at ASNT are media companies. They've got content. They've got all kinds of things. They get into conferences. They get into book publications. They're now trying to get into credentialing. Well, I've got to be able to have an active process of selling to the stakeholder set. I can't just assume it's going to happen. So I would say value starts with the customer, moves into your product and your marketing. If you can't do those three things, oh, by the way, that's business 101, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and making sure you're staying close to the customer, which is in your case the members, and listening to them on an ongoing basis, and then pivoting and guiding the way. Neal, this has been genuinely a very practical conversation. You've shared so many good inputs on how a long-range strategy becomes executable, how association can rethink the member value, what kind of things they should consider, and especially how to approach some of the technology changes, especially AI, without losing credibility or trust. I'm sure for the executives listening, this is this is going to be a great nuggets of conversation they can pick from here. So thank you so much for your time, Neal.
Pleasure.
This has been pretty amazing.
Good. Thank you.